Walking through this house makes me feel like an entirely different person than I was when I was back in Tennessee. And what I mean when I say that is that when I was in Tennessee, the room that I was in, it gave me a very specific feeling. It gave me very specific circumstances. It's that when you went outside in my old house, you were just immediately surrounded by nothing but trees. And it felt extremely isolating because I hated the atmosphere of the outside to the point that I just thought I hated outside in general. But what the real issue was, as I realized, was that what I hated was how the place looked. I hated the way the trees were set up. I hated the white trash that were in the neighborhood. I hated everything about that area. And then I projected that as hatred towards the outside. The outside isn't so bad. It was just where I lived was bad. And so, of course, you don't want to go outside when everything about it is shit. But that doesn't mean the entire world is shit. Why do you think I wondered so much about foreign countries? Why do you think foreign countries were just always on my mind? It's because this is a far-off place that can give me the things that I want, that I do care about, that I do love. America isn't so bad. Like, yeah, of course, it's a terrible country, and most of the states look the same, but at least some of them look the same in an alright fashion. Like, when I go outside in Virginia, it ain't so bad out there. It's like, go outside, let's open this door right now. No, it ain't so bad out here, right? We're going, it's fine. Like, you go outside and you see nice, cool stuff. You go to the park, you walk around, there's scenery and everything. It's fine. But when I would go outside at the old place, nothing but trees. Nothing but boring-ass fucking trees. And the few houses that were there, it was all people I was scared of. It was all people I was obnoxious about. And when I would go outside down the road, I tend to just deal with, even a pedophile at one point. Pedophile trying to come after me on the road. Only road I had to walk on. Everything about it was just terrible. The way you smelled when you got inside, because of the stink bugs around there, you just smelled like shit when you got inside. South has that problem in general, but not in Virginia. And so, it was just really bad. And now, when I go outside here, there's an immediate sense of difference, because I have places that I can walk to immediately, and I have nature and forests that I find to be interesting. It's not isolating. It doesn't feel like you can't go anywhere. Rather, it feels you can go everywhere because everything is just right there at your fingertips. In my last place, when you go outside, as I said, nothing but trees. Trees aren't even interesting. Just nothing. There was just nothing there for me at all. And so when you spend so much time in a place like that, eventually you start to go fucking insane, because my entire mindset was that I'm gonna stay in my room all the time. I'm gonna sit right here, and I'm gonna be on my computer every single day. I'm gonna surround myself with piss bottles. I'm gonna surround myself with media that I can indulge myself in to escape this hell. And not just the outside circumstances and the circumstances of the home itself, even in how the home was designed and the people that were in there. When I walked out of my room, I had no door. Had no fucking door, no privacy. And so I would isolate myself in my room all the time, and I'd constantly be on edge because I felt as if I was always being watched. I felt as if there was always going to be someone who comes in there and sees me. That ain't right. It ain't right to have no downtime, to have no privacy all throughout the day. Why do you think I stay up at night all the time back then? I still stay up at night, but the thing is that back then, back when I was outside, back when I was inside, excuse me, I had to be up at night because people would come around and they'd come and see what I was doing, and then they'd bother me. And even then, even when I stay up at night, you go inside, you can see my door. You see my door ain't there. I always felt as if someone was going to come in and just creep up on me. So, it was a huge mess, right? And, you never had that sense of privacy. You never felt as if you were safe. This even extended to the people I lived with. You know, my mother, she's a great person, but she's done some bad stuff in the past that I forgive her for, and I know she's never going to do again. But that messed with me for a long time. My dad, every time my dad was living there, well, there's a reason I'm at an abuse shelter. So, you know, it extended to the fact that I didn't have a door, that I felt that I never had privacy, made me feel that I was in danger. When you go outside, I never had freedom there. When the people that were there, I felt scared of. Whenever I interacted with them, I felt upset. You know, when my mom and dad, all the time they were together, it felt as if the worst aspects of both of them were just coming out. And so that felt even worse, having to interact with them. So all of it felt like shit. And I remember the person I was at that time was largely informed by that, because if you want to stay in your room all the time, if you want to be in there forever, probably because of escape, right? It's probably because you have something that you're trying to hide from. You have something that you're trying to escape from. People don't try to escape for no reason. They come there because they want to get away. And I know exactly what I was trying to get away from, though. That ain't there no more. And I feel as if, because that ain't there, I am a very different person, and the way that I interact with the world is different. You know, that breakup that I had with Weeb Trash Productions, with Max, as many of you would know him as, for a long time, it fucked me up, right? It really upset me, the fact that that happened. But as I do things now, as I continue to explore my inner self and how these things go about, why they're here, where they can go, where any of this can go, the more I realize that I didn't like that much to begin with. Reason I clung to him so much in the first place was because I felt he was the only one who I had, or who could be available, that I could at least have a decent time with. You know, maybe I felt that other people were available that I could get with, but he was the only one who I felt that I had a chance with. That was the reason why I cared. And sure, there were things about him that I did legitimately love about him. But the fact of the matter is that the bad parts of him, the parts that annoyed me, far outweighed the good parts. Like, I was really, really trying my best to enjoy the good parts, to care about the good parts. But honestly, our friendship was not even that good for like a long time. I was trying my best to continue the friendship, to care about him in the way that I always did. But even my feelings as a friend, even those had started to dwindle long, long ago. But I continued clinging to them. I continued trying to make that work because I didn't want everything to fall apart. And I wanted a chance to eventually be in a relationship with him. That was always the idea that I had in the back of my head, even when I would try to get him to date girls and other people. It was always the idea I had in my head, so I had to keep trying. I had to keep staying his friend. You know, it says, hiding in my room would always put it, the only reason he interacts with people is for sex. Well, in this situation, I was more or less the same. And there were deep, deep parts of myself that I was suppressing specifically to continue interacting with him. There were things that greatly annoyed me about him that I was suppressing to continue interacting with him because I felt that eventually there would be a chance. And I think about who that was. I think about the person who was doing that. And they deeply, deeply have problems with being alone. I always have. I've always felt that I need someone to depend on. I've always wanted someone to be there for me. But the only person who can be there for me is me. You can't rely on these motherfuckers to, you know, spend time with you and to really think your problems through with you and to always be there for you, because no one can do that. It's not their fault. Like, people have their own issues. People have their own things about them that they need to reconcile and that they need to pay attention to within their own life. And that's perfectly valid. I have to do the same too without relying on other people to pick up my problems for me, you know? Like, I have to be the one in control of this mess. And I am. This is my duty. This is my... Everything that I do is a consequence of my choice and how I act. I can change that. I am in charge of that. And if I'm in charge of that, then I also need to be in charge of my own self-worth and my own time that I may spend in isolation when I feel lonely. You can't simply let yourself concede to those feelings of loneliness and just settle for someone. That's what I did. I just settled for someone. And sure, it was nice. For parts of it. Sure, he did love me quite a bit, but it was never going to be stable. I said it was going to last forever, but it was never going to. Because honestly, the negative feelings that I harbored for him, they were being suppressed, and they were going to come out one way or another. Whether, you know, that way being a big argument or whatever, eventually it was going to die out. Because there was only so long that I could continue suppressing those feelings. So, maybe it was good. Maybe it was good that it ended when it did. Because if I kept doing that, if I kept feeling that way, eventually it was all going to blow up anyway. There's nothing wrong with what happened. I simply lost someone who I had been way too obsessed with. Reason I was obsessed with him was out of desperation. When I watch his videos now too, like, watching his videos now is not even nearly as fun for me as it used to be. Sure, there's aesthetic elements of his videos that I really love. There's parts of them that are really cool, but he still has this, like, meandering writing style that doesn't really suit him. And, like, there's all these different parts that I wouldn't pay attention to, or I would enjoy more for the fact that it was him. But when I watch them now, I can't help but think about all the bad parts of it, all the flaws that I always saw. And yeah, he makes great videos, but he's not one of the best YouTubers. He's only one of the best YouTubers because in your mind, you're filled with those love chemicals, and so everything about them becomes great, regardless of rational thought. That's what love is. It's seeing past the flaws to be able to enjoy the flaws and like those flaws for what they are and find them enjoyable. But when all of that falls apart, when those chemicals aren't being shot directly into your veins anymore, you start to see what the flaws were all along. And they hurt, don't they? You see it, and then you notice how bad everything was to begin with. You know, it's like how drugs alter your perspective on things. I've taken several different psychiatric medications all throughout my life. When I was 8 years old, I got on Lamictal, I got on Strattera. You know, nowadays I take Lexapro and hydroxyzine. I've taken Latuda before. There's a couple different other ones that I've taken, you know, marijuana, you know, CBD oil, which is, you know, less, it takes the part that makes you high out. All of these different medications that I've taken in some way alter your perception of reality to then produce a logical reaction that is fitting of the emotions that you have. Your emotions are ultimately decided by the chemicals that are being inhibited in your brain at the time, and then the reactions and the words that you spit out to the world are a product of your emotions. It always is. And so under this chemical state where your brain is being intoxicated by love, the logical feelings that you feel towards that person of this content isn't really as great as I thought it was, or these flaws kind of annoy me, eventually all of that subsides. Because now you're only thinking about the good parts. You're only thinking about those intoxicating chemicals that are just filling every fiber of your being. And so your entire perception of the world, your entire perception of that person at that point is filtered by that. It is filtered by those chemicals. It's like the They Live glasses, where you put the They Live glasses on and then you see what everything truly means, or in this case, you know, what it doesn't mean. You know, you take the They Live glasses off. And so, in that instance, I had just felt that he was the greatest person. I had felt that everything about him was super great. And that is not true. He is not the greatest person who's ever lived. Clearly, I am not the greatest person who's ever lived, and I think he would agree with that now that we've broken up. It's the chemicals in your brain telling you that these things are true, but they're not. The reason why you believe they're true is because you're being intoxicated. So, I think about all these things. After the relationship is broken up, and I think about how happy I am and can be without him, how stressful certain aspects of the relationship were, how much I had tried to keep the relationship going even though the passion wasn't there, how much I was annoyed by certain things he was doing but then buried them deep down, and I can't help but feel it was a good thing. It was a good thing for it to end. And I'm happy that it did, to be honest. I don't care. I don't fucking care anymore. Like, it was so stupid of me to get as upset about it as I did, but the reason why I did was because when you're cut off from that supply of chemicals, when you're cut off from that adrenaline shot, you get withdrawals. Sometimes withdrawals make you do fucking retarded things. Right here, this character, Isaiah from Durarara, is my background. This is a character who, in concept alone, I deeply relate to. He's the villain of the show. The way Isaiah works is that he understands the systems around him, and he makes these arrogant assumptions as to how everyone around him works. He understands these little clicks and ticks and issues that everyone has going around with them. He keeps tabs on everyone, essentially. And what he does when he understands the rules of society and the rules that govern others is he manipulates them. He finds holes in that system and he finds ways to use it against other people, as well as manipulating people through that. And I relate a lot to how Isaiah does things in a less, maybe a more manipulative and less evil sense, because the way that I do people is that very rarely do I feel an emotional connection to many people. I tend to tell myself that I do, and what I do is I just repeat that I have that emotional connection until it's true. And eventually it does become true. But ultimately, in the back of my mind, there is still that person who is trying to build something out of everybody, that is trying to understand the rules, the things that make those people tick, and then manipulate them. You know, when I was with Max, I spent a long time understanding all of the different things that he liked about people. I tried to change myself in a way that embodied those things. I tried to do things in a way that I knew he would respond well to based on what he said. And eventually, it worked. Eventually, I found out he had feelings for me. And the reason why was because I had changed myself into, as I would have worded it at the time, someone worthy of loving, which, I mean, that's not true. I just looked at the very simple things that he liked and then I did them. So, it's always an issue of trying to understand how people are. But the consequence of this, the consequence of manipulating people in this way and of understanding what they like, is arrogance. If you are someone who does these things, inevitably, you're probably pretty arrogant about how this is going to work. Because I remember when we first got together, I didn't want to tell him that I had suicidal feelings. I continued putting up this image of someone who was very strong. I kept saying, I'm going to make it through this. Excuse me. I don't have emotions towards any of this. I'm going to lift up this relationship. And the reason why I did that is because in a relationship, you want the other partner to feel that they have a sense of security, and you don't want to cling to them too much. Because if you cling to them too much, they feel that you need them, and that if they leave, they're not going to have a security blanket. Like, they might fuck you up in some way if they leave. And so Even though, if he left, I was gonna get fucked up, I would continually tell him when we first got together how strong I was and, how much I've gotten through everything and how I don't feel anything about the situation surrounding me. Truth was is that I was terrified. I was dealing with a lot with the police at the time. I was dealing with a lot with just all kinds of different factors that were driving me insane. But I continued presenting this calm, content figure who, when speaking to others, could put on the mask of someone who was completely in control. I did that so he would feel that the relationship itself was stable and was strong, even though in the back of my head I would always be thinking, it's not gonna last. If I let him see how I really feel, how I really am, it's not gonna last. And you know what I did? Eventually I did tell him how suicidal I was and how insecure I was, and eventually it didn't last because I didn't give that sense of security. You have to do that. You have to provide a sense that you are okay and that if the person leaves, you're going to be okay. Because if you don't do that, the other person is going to feel like they're being strangled. They're going to feel like they're being controlled, and it's going to make them nervous. It's going to make them upset because now their freedom has been taken away from them. And I was doing exactly what Isaiah was doing at the beginning of that relationship. I understood the rules. I understood exactly what they were. So I molded myself into someone who I wasn't in order to manipulate those rules, in order to manipulate those feelings. It wasn't honest. In fact, in many ways, it was probably a very bad thing to do. But reason why I did it is because I didn't feel that the relationship could work any other way. I felt that it was just going to crumble apart if I was completely honest about how emotionally unstable I was. And ultimately, I ended up hurting him more as a result of my dishonesty, even though the goal was to keep everything together. That's why dishonesty it hurts other people. And when I talk about arrogance, like what Isaiah does, is that he believes that because he knows best about how everything works, because he knows best about how everyone is, he believes that he can manipulate them perfectly to get the desired outcome that he has. The problem with that, however, is they're usually cogs in the system. They're usually things that, as a consequence of arrogance, don't work out correctly. In my case, my true colors had shown. And when I tried to manipulate the situation again, that didn't work, even though I thought it would. I wasn't completely right about how I could manipulate the environment to make everything go my way. I wasn't correct about that, but I believed I was. Because the thing about arrogance is that you believe that everyone else is weaker than you are as a result of your skill. You understand how to manipulate these people, and you understand how to lie in a way that most other people wouldn't, because they don't think about stuff like that. And when you get so into that idea, eventually you just feel that everyone else is cattle. They're not. They're deeper and more complex than you can think. Human beings are more nuanced than you think. So they can sometimes get past these things. And, the arrogance will kill you eventually, because at some point, everything's going to come back to you. At some point, everything falls apart. And you believe you were right. You believed you understood everything. But it turns out there was a little bitty part that you just couldn't admit to yourself was there all along, that you didn't control. And eventually, it ends. By the way, I haven't seen Durarara. Sometimes I sit here and I think about the songs that I heard when I was with Max. I think about Worlds Away by Lil Peep and Wedding Tux by Kid Cudi. Those two songs were deeply ingrained in my mind because what they represented to me at the time was our relationship perfectly. Why was that Wedding Tux is a song about how everyone out there isn't so good, and how he you know it's what's the lyrics? Emotional slave slut, she push and pulls, uses what she needs. uh what is it? Everyone looking for lightning, something like that. Right in plain sight, you deny it. Bury me to sleep in a wedding tux. Everyone, everything sucks, or something like that. You get the gist. You get the gist of what I'm saying. My memory's terrible, but what Cuddy is saying on that song is that, as long as we have each other, despite everything being terrible, I have you. I have you here, and that's gonna make everything okay. And he describes some of the bad things about that. He describes how, she is push and pulling, using him for what she needs. But ultimately, it's a positive song. Worlds Away by Lil Peep is feels like we're a world away, but we're in the same room. Be my girl today at least. She don't even know my name, but when she looked me in the eye like she know my pain, something like that. Fucking I can't remember the rest of the song. But yeah, it's that song. uh she bleeds the blood that you don't bleed. She looks at me like she loves me, all those lyrics. That song is about what I related especially to it, beyond the simple fact that it's very clearly saying that this person is perfect and special and that there's only one of them, is the fact that we were worlds away. It was an internet relationship. It did literally feel like we were worlds away because we were in completely different states and we were sexting, and it felt as if we were completely disconnected from each other, yet our connection emotionally was very strong, as it felt at the time. And so we had frequently fantasized about the day that we were going to be in the same room together, about the day that everything was going to come together, and when he was going to tell me, yeah, be my girl today and all that. But that song, in spite of it embodying so much of that emotion, when I play the song now, I feel nothing. Like, listen, yeah, it's a good song, but the fact of the matter is that song is only meant to be listened to when you're intoxicated by those chemicals. I feel like a different person now. The person who enjoyed that song, the person who listened to Wedding Tux and would cry, listened to Worlds Away and would cry, is not who I am anymore. Because they were so specific to that relationship. They were songs that embodied the internet. They were songs that embodied only wanting to be with one person and feeling that that one person was just perfect, and talking about all these feelings that I can't relate to those songs anymore. I don't feel like there is anyone in my life like that right now. I probably, honestly, those feelings of unconditional love and feeling that there's only one person for you, that they're the best person in the world, it's extremely rare and almost non-existent. When you get in a relationship with somebody, you can't cling to them like that. You can't be so head over heels for them, because it's just not rational. No one is that good. Sure, in your eyes, they can be amazing, but no one is that good. The feelings that those songs embody is just the person I was who felt that about someone is not, it's not who I am anymore. I don't think I can ever feel that way about someone again. Sure, maybe in an intoxicating emotional sense, I'll really love someone, but I don't think I can ever let myself feel that someone is truly perfect, that they bleed the blood that you don't bleed, that, yeah. People, They all bleed similarly. That's what I'm trying to get at. You know, they're not, people aren't that special. They don't tend to be that special. Sure, maybe they're special for choosing you, but at the end of the day, they're all just people. And you can't irrationally cling to someone to the point of believing that they're perfect, because eventually it only causes problems. And the person I was who believed that about someone is, I don't think it's someone who I can be again.
barely see my breath, surrounded by jealousy and death. I can't be reached, only heaven call.
You know, some nights it's fun being alive, and some nights it ain't really.
Separate from you all.
Some nights it's gratifying to do my job. Some nights I don't want to do shit.
Lost my own turn in spite
Some nights the only way to stay alive is to go to bed.
of everything I've learned. I hit my tracks, spit out
Some
all
nights I feel like none of it's worth it.
slipped into
Some nights I feel like I don't want to do anything that I'm doing.
all my cares.
Some nights I feel like everything I'm doing is bullshit. Some nights I feel like I don't want to go on this way. And I've learned those nights you just gotta sleep away. You just gotta go to bed. Because if you keep the train of thought going, it only leads to darkness. What's the sense in letting a night go on that you don't enjoy? If the thought ever crosses your mind, I don't want to live this night anymore, you just gotta let the night end.
You can write that down. It's all too